is how do you revive consumer sentiment and demand creation and in a way kickstart the growth momentum in the economy? Nilesh Shah, you're with the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. Is that really the big challenge? How do you revive in these pandemic times consumer sentiment and kickstart demand?
Undoubtedly, today in our economy, consumption is below pre-pandemic level. Trade, investments, government spending in agriculture are above pre-pandemic level. Now, there are two ways to revive consumption. One, using English proverb, either you give him a fish or you teach him a fishing. And I think both options should be exercised. We have seen Manrega creating employment in rural India, supporting consumption, and if used well, also creating infrastructure. Probably time has come to launch urban Manrega, which can especially support pandemic-impacted sectors like hotels and restaurants, school bus operators and teachers, hotels and tourism and travel kind of sector. The second thing is related to teaching fishing, which is essentially creating employment. Two sectors which employ maximum number of Indians are housing, real estate, and textiles. If we can create an incentive scheme for first-time buyers or give more concession for interest on housing loan and principal repayment, that will not only support housing and construction industry, but also leave more money in the hands of taxpayers who will spend it on consumption. In textiles, we have been big player on cotton growing or man-made fibers, spinning and weaving. But the maximum value at which happens on garmenting, a Bangladesh or a Vietnam is way ahead of us. How do we incentivize through fiscal or other measures so that garmenting industry can take off? That will create employment, especially at the bottom of the pyramid. And this kind of steps together can support consumption.
Interesting. You're giving us solutions, including urban Manrega, which has been spoken about for a while, that you need an urban employment guarantee scheme. Professor Arun Kumar, you heard someone who's associated with the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council accepting in a way that you need to kickstart consumer demand. Where would you start? Would you support, for example, urban employment scheme?
Of course, that's been one of my key recommendations for the last 2 years, that we need that, because you see, even though the official data says that consumption has come back to more or less the level that was there in 2019, just a little bit lower, but this does not include the unorganized sector. And yesterday we had this report that showed that the bottom 60% have lost incomes as compared to 2015-16. Especially the bottom 20% have lost like half the income. So, there's a huge problem of incomes and therefore of demand, especially in the unorganized sector, and that doesn't get captured in our official data. So we do need to increase rural employment. We do need to increase the wages there. We have only 100 days of work available, and according to data, perhaps only 50 days of work is available. So that needs to be at least increased to 100 days. So that would imply that we need to maybe triple our allocation to the rural employment guarantee scheme. And then, we need to structure an urban employment guarantee scheme where education, health, and infrastructure should be the focus. That would generate a lot of jobs because, education, health do employ a lot of people. They are, people intensive rather than capital intensive. So those two would be very good. I would also say we need to support the micro sector. We lump all our policies into MSME, and the small and medium get the benefit, not the micro sector. The micro sector is 99% of the MSME sector and employs 97.5% of the MSME employment. Now, unless that sector revives, our employment generation would not revive, incomes would not revive. So though 5 kilogram of ration is being given to the poor people, but that's inadequate, as the National Health and Family Welfare Survey shows that there is a lot of malnourishment and undernourishment and stunting there, which means that in spite of these schemes, people are still not able to consume enough. And not only that, they have other demands as well, which are not fulfilled. So therefore, the micro sector needs to be taken care of. There, the availability of credit is very important. Unfortunately, what happens is when we declare policies for MSME, then the small and medium get the benefit, but not the micros. Therefore, specially targeted scheme for the micro sector, that would be very essential if we need to revive demand. The question always is raised is how are we going to raise resources for this kind of a program, because it would require very substantial amount of resources to be allocated to these, which have not been done in the past. So that would be the next challenge that would come, that either the deficit would rise or you would need to raise fresh resources through taxation. But you cannot raise resources through taxation of indirect tax kind, because that would be inflationary and that would further create problems of demand. So therefore, the burden would have to fall either on raising the fiscal deficit, which the government would not like, or the direct taxes, which the well-off sections may not like. So the government has a very tough choice how to boost demand in the present system. And as Mr. Shah has correctly pointed out, that at this point of time, government seems to be the best bet for raising demand. The export sector also is not likely to raise demand because our imports are running much higher than the exports, which means that there is a deflationary impact of that on the economy, because the trade deficit is rising, the current account deficit is quite high. So therefore, ultimately, the burden would be on public investment and improvement in private consumption through public